Some people survive war, but something in them doesn't return with them. Not physically, not emotionally, but in ways other people can clearly notice and can't explain. There was a soldier who came home alive, but according to his family, something about him was already different the moment he returned. And over time, they began noticing things that didn't belong in normal reality. Welcome back to the channel. This story was shared through a close family connection. Names and locations have been changed for privacy, but the events themselves were never fully explained. Now, let's begin. Before deployment, there was nothing unusual about him. He was quiet, disciplined, predictable, the kind of person who followed structure without question. He stayed in regular contact with his family during training. Short messages, simple updates, nothing emotional, but consistent enough to feel normal. Then he was deployed overseas, and after some time, the communication stopped completely. No warning, no explanation, just silence. At first, his family assumed it was due to operational conditions, but later, that silence felt different. Not just absence, but something missing where communication used to exist. What his family didn't know at the time was that something had already happened before he ever came back. During a mission in a remote area, he was found at the bottom of a hill, unconscious. No clear explanation for how he got there. No visible injuries that fully matched the fall, and no clear account of what had happened. When he eventually regained consciousness, he couldn't describe it, not in detail, not even in fragments that made sense. But one thing stayed with everyone who saw him. It wasn't what he said, it was how he looked. The fear in him wasn't confusion, it wasn't shock, it was something deeper, like whatever he experienced hadn't stopped just because he woke up. After that incident, his behavior slowly began to change. And not long after, he was removed from active deployment and sent home. When he returned, the relief came first. He was alive. That was enough, at least at the beginning. But the change became noticeable quickly. He spoke less, avoided eye contact, and sometimes stopped mid-sentence, as if something interrupted his thoughts. At first, they assumed it was trauma, so they gave it time. But then, something else started appearing around him. One evening, he suddenly stopped mid-movement, like something inside him had shifted without warning. Then he spoke, quietly, but completely out of context. "You don't need it anymore." No one responded immediately, not because they didn't hear it, but because the words didn't connect to anything happening in the room. It felt like the sentence belonged to a different conversation entirely. When they finally looked at him, he wasn't looking at anyone present. His eyes were fixed forward, unblinking, focused, like he was listening to something no one else could hear. And when they asked what he meant, he didn't acknowledge them at all. No reaction, no correction, just silence. Like whatever he was responding to was still ongoing somewhere else. After that, his behavior became harder to ignore. He started reacting to empty spaces, turning his head toward corners, pausing mid-movement, like he was avoiding something unseen. At night, he rarely slept properly, not because he was restless, but because sleep didn't feel stable anymore. Sometimes it didn't fully take hold. He would sit in silence for long periods, not emotional, not distracted, just still, occasionally whispering under his breath, then stopping, like waiting for a response that never came. His family tried to understand what was happening. At first, they took him to a psychiatrist. Sessions continued for weeks, but nothing improved. No clear diagnosis, no real progress. Then they tried something else. A religious approach, spiritual guidance, local rituals. But that didn't change anything either. Whatever was happening didn't respond to either explanation. And after that, they stopped looking for answers that way, because nothing they tried seemed to reach him anymore. There were also things his family couldn't explain. Sometimes, if his bedroom door was slightly open, they would notice a faint smell coming from inside. Soft, strange, almost floral, but deeper than anything familiar. They never found its source. One night, his mother woke up suddenly because she heard laughter coming from his room, loud enough to echo through the hallway. She rushed to the door immediately. It wasn't fully closed, and when she looked inside, he was sitting on the bed, speaking in a language she didn't understand. But what stood out most was his expression. He looked calm, almost happy, like he was reacting to something only he could perceive, as if someone else was there with him. The moment she stepped inside, the atmosphere changed. A sudden warmth filled the room, like pressure had been released. And again, that unfamiliar scent was there. She asked him if he was okay, but when he looked at her, his expression shifted completely. Not confusion, not calm, but irritation. And he didn't respond. Not a single word. After a few seconds, she quietly left the room. After that night, things didn't stop. Sometimes they heard laughter again. Other times, crying at night, soft, unclear, coming from his room. But over time, they stopped reacting to it. Not because it felt normal, but because they didn't know how to respond anymore. So they stopped asking. Then, one night, a family member passed by his room. The door was slightly open. Inside, he was sitting on the edge of the bed, facing the wall, completely still. The room felt unusually quiet. Not normal silence, but something heavier than silence itself. And then they noticed something. The shadow on the wall didn't align properly with his body. It was slightly delayed, like it wasn't fully synced with him. For a brief second, it seemed to move before he did. It didn't last long, but it was enough to feel wrong. Not long after that, he said something clearly. I didn't come back alone. This time, no one tried to explain it away. Because now, there was something they had already seen. And it matched too well. He eventually left the military due to his condition. He still lives with his family in the same house. But something about him feels different now. Not distance in location, but distance in presence. Like he occupies the space physically, but not fully in the same awareness as everyone else. When spoken to, he responds slowly, sometimes with long pauses before answering, as if processing something slightly out of sync. And when nothing is said, he remains completely still, not asleep, not absent, just there, in a way that feels incomplete. So the question remains, what actually happened to him? Was it trauma? Something psychological? Or something he never truly came back from? If you've experienced something similar, let me know in the comments. And if you have your own story, you can send it to truehorrorfilesite@gmail.com, because sometimes surviving something isn't the same as coming back from it.